name's Meehan. I'm staff writer for Dicebreaker, and this is my top game of 2019, and it's called Detective Club. It's designed by Alexander Nevsky. It's being distributed by Blue Orange Games, and I got to play it this year at the Games Expo. And it's like a social deduction game, a bit like Dixit, but it's got a bit more structure to it. So you have these cards, and they have like lovely paintings on them, really beautiful art, and everyone gets a hand, and then one person writes down a topic, a theme of some kind, in each of these little books except for one. They hand them out secretly, and then obviously one person is not going to know what the theme is. Therefore, when the person who wrote the theme is like, okay, give me your cards, show me what you think matches with the topic, one person is not going to know what to play. So it's very much a case of looking what you've got, and if you're the person who doesn't know, playing something that you think fits with whatever else people are putting down. And then you play one card, we go around, look what people have got, and then we play another card. Once again, we do that. And then we reveal what the topic was, and that's when the real fun starts. Because everyone then has to go around and explain why they chose the particular card they played. This is very fun because it's the case of, obviously if the person didn't know the theme, they have to bluff or blabber or whatever to try and convince people that they knew what the theme was all along. However, some people just get dealt really terrible hands, which means that a lot of their cards have absolutely nothing to do with the topic. So for example, if the topic was peace or love, and you got a hand with a crab on the sand on it, or like a hat on a piece of ribbon, then you're like, oh no, what am I going to do? I guess I'll pick these. And then you have to try and explain, oh yeah, the crab represents, I don't know, the love for the sea or something like that. So then once everyone's said their piece, we go around and we vote on who we think was the spy. And believe it or not, there have been many, many games where the spy has completely gotten away with it. Simply because either one, someone is really terrible at persuading, or two, their cards are just so horrendous that no matter what they say, they will never convince people that they knew what the theme was. This happens over the course of about, I think it's 3 rounds, with people changing roles. You know, the spy becomes someone else, and then someone else becomes the person to write the topic. And then basically at the end of the 3 rounds, you know, whoever's been caught the most, I guess, is the loser. And then everyone else is like, yay, I won. And why I think this game works so well, as opposed to Dixit, for example, is the fact that Dixit is not really a game I get along with very much, because I like the idea of storytelling as a mechanic, but it's actually kind of boring when you don't have something like a full goal to really work towards, which is why Mysterium is so good as well, because you're taking this concept of using cards to tell stories, but you're putting it in a more like firm structure. And also, like, social deduction games are really great, but they can be really hard to get right. And there's a lot of rubbish ones out there because it's such a popular genre. But like Detective Club just does a really excellent job of that genre, combining it with storytelling. Those two mechanics just work so well, the persuasion element and the storytelling element. Also, it's a damn fine looking game, and it comes in a lovely little box that's very well sized. And I would honestly recommend it to anyone, especially people who like to play in big groups, who like party games, and for example need something to play this Christmas. It's available right now in the UK, pretty much just now, so I would recommend getting your hands on it. So Detective Club, it's a pretty good game.
Hi, I'm Sara. I'm the staff writer over at Dicebreaker, and I'm here to talk to you today about my favourite game of the year. Honestly, this has been quite a tough decision because there have been so many great games released this year, both across the RPG and the board game space. In this instance, I'm going to pick the game King's Dilemma, which I've been playing now. Played about 5 games of it so far with an ongoing group, and I've just really enjoyed it so much. I think the main reason that I enjoy it is because it really encourages you to be just absolutely horrible in like every possible way. And I also really enjoy it because it sort of fulfills a fantasy of mine, which is what it's like to actually play the Game of Thrones. Because in King's Dilemma, you're effectively, well, you're a council. So while you don't actually have the crown, you're not the king, you're advising the king. And as part of the council, you each pick a certain noble house to represent. And each of the noble houses comes with their own unique backstory and sort of desires and kind of values. And these can really range. You know, you can play anyone from say like some seafaring, quite sad poets to an extremist cult dedicated to the cult of the mother. Right down to sort of xenophobic chaps that really don't care what happens beyond their borders, or indeed like what happens to the poor people. I picked this particular house, which is dedicated to the cult of the mother, because I'm quite a big fan of like the heel in wrestling. I think that having a really nasty bad guy just kind of makes things a lot of fun. And King's Dilemma definitely has a lot of houses that can be the bad guy. It also gave me plentiful opportunity to shout, "Give the people a grim display!" just again and again, and I could also just refer to everyone as my brothers and sisters. So I enjoyed that. So the way that King's Dilemma works is that you basically open up these tiny, tiny, tiny envelopes, and inside each envelope there is a decision that you have to make, or a dilemma if you will. And you can basically choose like yes or no on the decision. So without giving away any spoilers, because really the storyline is the main thing that holds this together, one decision might be something like, do we give this newfound iron we found to the military, or do we put it back into the treasury? And this will relate to a sort of gorge which tells you the stability of the kingdom, a little bit like the video game Reign to Majesty. So say in the above example where you're deciding whether or not to give weapons to the military or weapons to the treasury, in a manner of speaking, you would find that if you say gave the weapons to the military, that military favour would go up, which might increase overall stability. However, if you put them in the treasury, the economy will go up, but the military might take a little bit of a hit in morale. So really your decisions do actually have quite like a big impact on the way the kingdom works. And I'd say that the story decisions, like they started out really quite arbitrary. Like I'm a huge fan of kind of like the sort of quote like choose your own adventure kind of genre, big fan of the fighting fantasy books, all that kind of stuff. And initially in King's Dilemma, the decisions did start out quite arbitrary. You know, it was very much like, do we buy the poison crops? And it's like, well, no. And it's like, do we free the slaves? It's like, well, yeah. I mean, even like the bad people in the in the houses kind of like recognized that was probably the best thing to do in that particular circumstance. However, as decisions went on, and as the legacy, because this is a legacy game that takes place over around 15 games, started to kick in, we started to see really unexpected consequences for decisions that we'd made previously. You know, and these ranged from like things that were just so unbelievably awful that by around the 3rd game, we'd become trauma bonded by the horror of what we'd wrought on the poor, poor people that we were ruling. But also because sometimes things that we'd chosen to do that were quite good actually turned out quite bad. Like for example, again, without giving away too many spoilers, going back to my previous cult person, there were definitely times where I was kind of beating people up for not executing the criminals because it led to a bad time. So I think it's very unexpected, and this sort of shared story element where really quite terrible things happen really kind of brings you together as a play group, but also just gives you loads of opportunity to shout at people for no particular reason other than that it's fun. Also, initially, I would say that King's Dilemma started out as very kind of standard fantasy fare. You know, it's very kind of like dark fantasy. You've got the kingdom, you've got all the like neighboring colonies, etc., etc. However, as it evolved, again, that unexpected element came in, and it kind of, without giving away any spoilers, it really expanded out into like quite a weird story with lots of extremely unexpected elements. And that was something that we all really enjoyed. Also, as I mentioned previously, it's a legacy game, so you've got all your tiny envelopes which have to be opened, which is just quite an enjoyable experience in itself. Because it's a legacy game, it has all these fantastic kind of ongoing elements, which includes, of all the wonderful legacy things, just so many stickers. And these range from stickers that you can just kind of stick on the board and sign. And what's quite fun about that is you might be like, oh, it's great, like we discovered cacti. And then like maybe 3 generations down the line, you will just like rue the day that your forebears discovered cacti because the consequences have just been so awful and now can never be taken back. And you're just sitting there trying to fix this mess that's just getting worse and worse. And there's more fire and blood and sadness and people dying just everywhere. Anyway, so that's another aspect that makes it fun because you really do feel the brunt of your consequences through this legacy mechanic. Another aspect of it that's fun is that like you get increasingly more forbidden stickers as you play through. So for example, like we've just started revealing the big stickers, which are really big. They're about this big, and you kind of peel them off, and they reveal really terrible secrets, and they'll reveal like the reasons why something happened, or and you'll be like, oh my God, that's why this thing happened. And you'll just all be really shocked and again, trauma bonded as this terrible truth or whatever it is just kind of sinks in. I think that also another thing that I really like about King's Dilemma, and this might be something that sort of I've experienced quite a lot because I've been playing this with a group that I predominantly play Dungeons and Dragons with, is that the role-playing element is actually really fun. Like if you want to get into it, and you don't have to because you can just play it as a straight up kind of mechanic where you're bluffing, you're doing the social deduction. But if you want to role play, then that is again really fun. It can really kind of just let you improvise, really get into this kind of mindset. And also we found, funnily enough, that we would get into these interesting kind of like philosophical arguments, about like what the nature of truth was, or whether like we should support the cannibals, all these kinds of things that were kind of crazy, but also kind of ran a little bit deep and kind of caused us to maybe question like our own morality. So that was kind of like an unexpected element of it that really drew me in, and I think has made it like a very fun game to play. I would say, although I've not finished King's Dilemma yet, it will hopefully sort of culminate in a bloody denouement about 10 games down the line or so. I would say that thus far, what it's provided has been something actually like quite unique for me. I don't think that there's any other games out there doing quite what King's Dilemma does, and I think if there are, they're maybe not doing it quite as well as King's Dilemma does, quite as effectively. Because yes, admittedly the story engine is a bit of a faff to set up, but once it's going, like I've been genuinely surprised at kind of the directions in which stories have gone. And I'm a huge fan of kind of like anything like sort of story paths, whether that's in kind of video games or in the board. And I found that King's Dilemma actually does take some quite surprising turns. It also varies up the mechanics quite a lot, so you'll find that as games go on, new and exciting things will be introduced. Again, I don't want to ruin this for anyone, so I won't give any spoilers, but I will just emphasize that some of these things are really big and really do affect how both the party interacts and also just how you play the game. So for me, like I've picked King's Dilemma because I think it's unique, I think it's interesting. I think for a certain type of player who enjoys that kind of mix of storytelling, socializing and role-playing, it's really perfect, and I think will give them a very unique experience which they wouldn't be able to find in any other game. So in conclusion, if playing the Game of Thrones and essentially destroying everyone and just being a bit of a horrible bastard really appeals to you, it's definitely worth a shot.
Hello, I'm Wheels, video producer here at Dicebreaker.com, and my game of the year for 2019 is a storytelling game about how great civilizations fall by Spencer Stark called Icarus. Now, for those of you who watched our YouTube channel, you will know that I've already actually done a video on Icarus. It was a review, and you'll probably know if you've watched that video just how passionate I am about this game. Icarus is basically an RPG that requires no prep, no game master, just a few friends in a room with some cards, some pencils and paper, and some dice. In this game, you're all going to be playing as pillars of a great civilization that you're essentially just going to create together at the start of the game. You will talk about why that civilization exists, how it got into power, what makes it special, and what its sort of core flaw is. And throughout the game, you're going to basically be going through a lot of tasks, a lot of challenges that you're going to be faced with as a civilization, as a society. Playing as like the pillars of this society, for example, great doctors or presidents or maybe leaders of the captain of the guard, something like that. You're going to be trying to enact what your character wants based on the motive card that you played at the start of the game. It could be something like you want to protect the leaders of this civilization. Maybe you are some kind of like monopolizing media mogul who's got all of the power in the world and doesn't want anyone to take it from them. Maybe you're a bit more, people focused, and you're looking for the citizens of this society to come out on top. Or maybe you just want to destroy the city from within. Based on those motives and the character that you're playing as, you're going to be enacting with them certain things that happen through the story. But the cool thing about Icarus is you're not just playing as those characters. Those characters are just the pawns that you use to further the story. In Icarus, you're all collectively telling the story of your city and how this great, expansive empire crumbled into dust. It's something that happens in real life. For example, the Roman Empire, right? What led to the collapse of the Roman Empire? And you can go for a historical viewpoint. You can go far off into the scientific future. You can have fantasy lands of elves and orcs. You can have whatever you like. The rule set's pretty varied, and it keeps the cards vague enough that you can apply it to any setting that you like. But it's evocative enough that it really gets you thinking. And with a group of friends who like being creative and sitting around and just sort of like coming up with wild ideas, you will have so much fun with this game. I absolutely adore this. When we first picked it up and when I first opened it to play, I told this story of Icarus, this futuristic AI city, and you'll know if you watch the video, I was so enamored by the story that we told, I ended up retelling it throughout the review. And every other time that I've played it since then, I've always had some wacky story to tell about what we got up to, like our Martian independence story, where there was a player called Matt who invented basically a new food species called figlums, and that was essentially his entire character arc, was just trying to get this weird vegetable to be really popular. And there's just such a hotbed of weird ideas and cool things that can happen in this game, and I really think it deserves your attention. Spencer Stark is, from what I can tell, a really nice guy as well. I've looked him up on Twitter and he's pretty cool. So I think he deserves your attention as someone who's going to be making some cool things in the future. He's working on a new RPG at the moment, as far as I'm aware. So definitely one to look out for in the years to come. And it's Renegade Games, which is a good publisher as well. I think they've got some decent titles under their belt. The reason I think you should pick Icarus is because it is a really interesting way of telling a story. It's not like any other RPG I've ever played, and I think the presentation's really lovely as well. Like, just this box is gorgeous and really evocative of the theme that it's trying to tell without, sticking itself to one different type of it. So, that is Icarus. That is my Game of the Year 2019. If you'd like more details, you can click on our video, which I'll have for you on the end slate. And in fact, that's all of us for now, because we're going to be waiting until tomorrow to find out the rest of the team's Games of the Year for 2019. So if you enjoyed this, there is plenty more content here on the YouTube channel and on Dicebreaker.com. You can click on a few of our videos at the bottom of the video here, or you can click on the subscribe button, which is in the center. If you click on the bell, you'll also get notified every time we put something new live. And we have got a lot of stuff coming in the upcoming year of 2020, so stick around. It's going to be good. Most importantly, have a lovely year.